So, you know your phase by now. By now, you know your identity. And you have sat with the recognition of which high functioning strategy has truly been running your expansion. And if you're really being honest with yourself, which I suspect most of you have been, that recognition probably came with some uncomfortable feelings, maybe underneath it, right? Not shame per se, more like a particular discomfort of actually being seen accurately. So, what I want to do today is actually give you the other side of that recognition because every single high functioning identity that we've talked about, the capable one, the responsible one, the strong one, high performer, the relatable one, each one of them has a direct line to an expanded identity, a more integrated version of leadership that carries all of the strengths of the original without the ceiling that it came with. So today is about what you're actually moving towards. So take a breath, allow that to land, know that we're moving towards something. Go ahead and I want you to look at the handout. Let me see if I can actually share it here. So there we go. We are seeing the identity evolution, right? Through the threshold. I'm hoping that's what everybody is seeing here, right? So being able to notice that we actually, you can see two columns, right? So again, make sure that you find your identity threshold or the identity evolution through the threshold handout. I want you to have that up. I'm going to leave it up here for you to look at too. There's two columns, and we've spent real time with the left side, the high functioning identities, what they built, what they cost. Today, we're spending our time on the right side, right? The expanded identities, and more importantly, what the crossing between them actually looks like. So the right column is not who you're supposed to become, it's who you already are underneath the strategy that you no longer need to survive, right? So let's go through each one of these. Um, Again, I'm not sure how big this is and if you can see it well. I'm trying to see if maybe I can expand it a little bit, if that helps. I think that might help some. Yeah. Oops. There we go. All right. So there we go. Hopefully that is much easier for you to read. All right. So we are going to go through each one of these. And as we go through these, notice what happens just in your body, not in your mind. Some of these will sort of land with a quiet yes, like that's it. Some will feel like a bit of a relief, and some might actually feel like a stretch or even a little threatening, right? All of this is information. So I just want you to remember that. All of it is information. So let's start with the first, the capable one. We are shifting from the capable one to the visionary leader. The capable one leads by executing at a level that no one else quite matches. That precision, the anticipation, that high standard. It built everything that she has, that you have, right? And it's real and it does not go away. But with it, there is a ceiling baked into it. When your leadership is expressed primarily through what you personally produce, the organization or the business or the team can only grow as large as your personal bandwidth, and you become bottlenecked, of like you become the bottleneck, right, of your own expansion. So with that, like the visionary leader keeps every single one of those strengths, right, with that precision, the anticipation, the high standard. She just stops expressing them through control, and she starts expressing them through direction. She sets the standard, she holds the vision, she trusts others to carry responsibility at their level, which finally frees her up to operate at her level. Okay, so here, the thing she has to be willing to tolerate is imperfection in execution. And it's not indefinitely, but long enough for the people around her to actually develop, right? That tolerance is not lowering the standard. It's the standard that's applied to leadership rather than just output, right? So, what gets to change here by doing that? Leadership expressed through direction and clarity rather than personally executing every single detail. Here, others are trusted to carry responsibility, which actually creates empowerment and also creates capacity that she has never had before. Her influence begins to scale beyond what she can personally touch, right? So, we're scaling, we're expanding. The ceiling of her growth rises because it's no longer the ceiling of her bandwidth, right? So, this is all that gets to happen when you shift into that visionary leader, when you let go of the control. So, you may agree with everything I just said, and you might still feel that quiet resistance to actually letting go. Just know that that resistance is the threshold itself. Don't try to resolve it here, right? We're just naming it. The knowing and the doing are two different things. The work of crossing is what we talk about in the next training. All right, so that's the first one. The second is the responsible one, and we're shifting from the responsible one to the empowering leader. So the responsible one holds groups together. She feels the emotional temperature of a room before anyone else does. And she's the one that's adjusting, right? Smoothing the friction, absorbing the tension, making sure everyone is okay, right? That is not a small thing. That emotional intelligence is extraordinary. But here's what the pattern quietly costs the people around her: they never really get to develop their own resilience. They never have to sit with their own discomfort long enough to find their own way through it because she gets to it first, right? The empowering leader, when we shift into the powering leader, she doesn't lose that care, which is something that we worry about. Am I going to lose this part of me? I really love this part of me. She doesn't become the cold or withholding leader. She actually gets to redirect it. So instead of stabilizing others' experiences for them, she actually gets to create the conditions for others to stabilize themselves. She holds them capable rather than comfortable. And that is ultimately a much deeper form of care. But this shift does require something. This shift requires her to tolerate others' discomfort without rushing to resolve it, to watch someone struggle with something and trust that the struggle is doing something so important. And that is genuinely hard for her. And it is the specific edge her expansion lives on. So, what gets to change when we move, right? When we move into the empowered leader? She allows others to own their own emotional experiences, including the difficult ones, the ones that we really grow from, right? She gets to hold her compassion. Her compassion becomes actually a standard that holds people capable, but not a buffer that protects them from growth. She actually stops carrying outcomes that belong to someone else, and the relationships in her life shift from dependency to a genuine accountability. Okay. So just be on the lookout. If you're saying, like, I just feel responsible for how everyone else is feeling, that is the exact sentence that keeps you held. That's the responsible one at doing exactly what she was built to do. And you're right at the edge of where that stops serving you. So don't fix it here. Just name it clearly and identify it. Okay. The third identity is the strong one. And we're moving from the strong one to the connected leader. So, the strong one, again, as a reminder, the strong one is remarkable under pressure. She stays composed when everyone else is unraveling. She carries an enormous amount, and she does it without showing any kind of strain. People, excuse me, people really trust her, right? They trust her precisely because of this. She's the one they look to when things get hard. And she is often quietly, completely feeling alone. And it's not because people don't love her or want to be close to her, but because the identity that built her strength was built on a specific belief. And that belief was that being seen in difficulty means losing authority, that needing something means being less trustworthy, that the composed exterior is what makes her leadership possible. So oftentimes here, people admire her from a distance. They don't really know how to reach her because she doesn't let them. And that burden she carries alone keeps her ceiling lower than it needs to be. So when we're looking at the connected leader doesn't lose the resilience. She actually adds something to it. She learns that being witnessed honestly in difficulty is not exposure. It is actually the specific quality of presence that creates the kind of trust that changes the rooms. When she allows herself to be fully known, she actually gives permission to everyone around her to do the same thing. That is a different kind of leadership than what she's been practicing. It is, in many ways, a way more powerful one. So, what gets to change in her world, right? She allows support as a genuine expression of strength, not as a concession to weakness. Others can actually reach her, which deepens the quality of every single relationship in her life. Her willingness to be known becomes a model for the culture that she is building. And the weight she was carrying alone becomes a shared architecture, and she gets to put some of it down, right? So, if you're feeling something here, just know that this is often the shift that creates the most visible emotional response in the room, right? When we are the strong one, right? The strong one recognizes herself right here in this moment. And you might be feeling the ache of it. And I'm going to encourage you to not rush past that, right? There might be a quiet, I know, and a pause. Just pause and allow yourself to feel that. Like, I know, I feel this, I feel seen. This is one of the hardest ones. Now, let's move on to the fourth identity. So, we're looking at the high performer to the aligned creator. The high performer, she gets shit done, right? She has the track record that commands respect. She finishes what she starts, she delivers every single time. And she often doesn't know how to stop. Not because she's incapable of stopping, but because stopping, pausing, resting, sitting still, it actually activates something that feels like a threat. If she's not producing, she's not valuable. And if she's not moving forward, she's falling behind. The urgency isn't actually coming from your calendar, even though we often identify it as that. That's just surface level. It's actually coming from inside. What gets built from this place is highly impressive. It's also, over time, highly depleting, right? There's a particular quality that work produced from urgency, right? That you don't have. It's a quality that only comes when the work is an expression of who she is rather than a defense against who she's afraid she might be without. So, when we're looking at this, the aligned creator, when we're shifting into the aligned creator, she actually doesn't produce less. She produces differently. Like I said, we're not losing anything, we are gaining everything, right? The aligned creator works from clarity rather than pressure. She actually chooses, right? Intentionally chooses sustainability as strategy rather than a compromise. She creates from a place of inherent worth, which means the work she makes carries a different resonance. It's not just accomplished, it's actually alive, it's breathing, it's palpable, you can feel it. So, what gets to change when we shift into the aligned creator? The urgency that drove her, drove you, right, becomes a choice rather than a compulsion that we need to complete, right? She can pause. We can rest and reflect without your identity destabilizing. Work produced from alignment has a very, very different quality, and it resonates rather than just impresses, right? People, again, feel it. It like moves through them. And what else gets to happen is that she builds something that can become a legacy because it's no longer entirely dependent on constant motion. Remember, we're looking at sustainability. Now, you might be nodding along while simultaneously planning your next launch, planning your next meeting. Okay, that's not resistance. That is the pattern in real time, and you can name it, right? Some of you are taking detailed notes right now about how to perform this shift more effectively, right? That impulse is the very thing we're talking about. We'll work with it, not against it, right? In the Trinity training, in the next training. And finally, we're looking at the relatable one. We're moving from the relatable one to authentic authority. So let's look at this. The relatable one really creates connection wherever she goes. She has warmth. She has an accessibility that makes people feel really safe with her immediately. She's the kind of leader people genuinely want to follow, not because they're obligated to, but because she makes them feel seen. And she often does all of that while quietly making herself smaller, right? She qualifies her expertise before sharing it. She downplays the scope of what she's built. She softens her authority so that people around her remain really comfortable. And underneath all of that is this belief, usually unexamined, that her full presence is too much. That if she takes up too much space, or the space that she actually deserves, that she will lose the connection that she has worked so hard to build with her family, with her friends, with her colleagues, with her clients, right? So, when we shift into the authentic authority doesn't lose the warmth. She doesn't become hard or distant or intimidating, which is what we fear. She becomes more fully herself. She speaks with clarity, with conviction. She claims the full scope of her expertise without apologizing for it. And she stops managing other people's comfort at the expense of her own integrity. And here's what she begins discovering on the other side, that the connections actually get deeper because the people who stay when she is fully herself are the people who actually see her. And the people who are put off by her full presence, those were not her people to begin with. So, what gets to change? She claims the full scope of her leadership without qualification or apology. Her presence itself becomes the influence, not the performance of being approachable or acceptable. The connections that she builds from this place are based on genuine resonance rather than managed safety. And she stops editing herself and discovers that the right people are more drawn to her, not less. Okay? So, with this shift often creates some real quiet recognition. Just stillness, not tears, not laughs, just stillness. Because the relatable one has usually been managing her visibility for so long that the idea of not doing it feels simultaneously like freedom and a little bit like falling. And we want to honor both. The freedom is real, and so is the vertigo. Both are part of the crossing. Okay? So I'm going to stop sharing here and hope that you have your identity evolution through the threshold in front of you as well, and that some of this, if not all of it, really resonated with you. And before we go into a reflection, I want to say one thing very clearly. Everything on the right side of your handout, the expanded identity, is built on what's already on the left. Okay. So the visionary leader has the capable one's precision. She just directs it differently. The empowering leader has the responsible one's emotional intelligence. She just applies it differently, right? The connected leader has the strong one's resilience. The aligned creator has the high performer's capacity for output, and the authentic authority has the relatable one's warmth. Nothing gets abandoned, nothing gets left behind. This is not a demolition of your life. The expanded identity is not a replacement. It is what the high functioning strategy was always trying to become. It really laid the foundation, but then it got stuck trying to keep you safe. Excuse me. The strategy was never the problem. The strategy was actually the solution to something that needed solving at a particular point in your life. You built it because it worked. That's how amazing and adaptable you are. What we're talking about here is what happens when you no longer need that protection, right? When the thing that once kept you safe has become that's actually like the thing that's keeping you contained. And that's the threshold. And you're already at it, or you wouldn't be here. So take a moment with the handout. Look at the right column, the expanded identity, the one you recognized, or the one that felt a pull, even if it also felt like a stretch. And ask yourself one question, not how do I get there? That's not today's question. Just this. What would be different in how I lead, how I relate, how I show up if I were already leading from that identity? You don't have to have the answer. The question is enough for right now. I'd love to hear from a few of you. What did you recognize? What is the shift that most felt alive? What has been most challenging? Respond back to this email. Let us know. We're here to support you. And here's what I want to leave you today. You can see it now, the identity that you're moving into. It's not abstract anymore. It has a name, it has qualities, it has a felt sense. And I imagine that some of you are sitting with a very reasonable question. Okay, I can see where I'm going. So, how do I actually get there? So, that question is the right question. And that's exactly what we're going to dive into in the next training. Because seeing the destination is not the same as having a map. Knowing who you're becoming is not the same as understanding the process through which that becoming actually happens. So, what we're going to be talking about next, the Trinity of Identity Thresholds, it's the mechanism, it's the method. It's the actual process by which this shift stabilizes in your body, in your thinking, and in your life. Okay? This isn't a concept, it's an embodied, lived reorganization. And we're going to talk about why you can't think your way across the threshold and what you actually have to do instead. But for right now, sit with what you recognize today. Let the right column mean something to you. Let it be a real destination, not just this idealized concept. The work of crossing is coming, and you are more ready for it than you know. The shift is not becoming someone new, it's finally becoming more fully who you've always been.